Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for Michell University. Today we'll be working with Infor FACTS, and we'll be talking about the concept of entering recurring, reversing, and allocating transactions. For purpose of today's demo, we're working with FACTS 7.7 as our demo. Within the FACTS system, under General Ledger, there's a subsystem which allows us to create recurring, reversing, and allocating transactions. So let's go into General Ledger, and we can see here that we have these options. What this allows us to do, again, is to create transactions that will be posted on a monthly basis. We create recurring or reversing transactions are used. For example, if the user needs to post, say, a depreciation on a recurring basis, or to accrual expenses for a period, but wishes to reverse them out of the next period. The allocation journal file maintenance allows the user to allocate percentages from a single General Ledger account to either a single or several other GL accounts. And we'll talk about this in a few moments. But before I start, let's show you something in the file maintenance. Again, we talked about this being done on a monthly basis. So if we go to our file maintenance, our infrequent file maintenance, and we look at our static controls, we will see here is the setup. Actually, it's not this one. We need to go to the non-static controls. And we can see here our recurring transactions, our reversing transactions, and our allocated transactions. So when we run this program, we will run this at the end of the month, and then this will update for the following month. So let's take a look now at the types of transactions. We're going to look at recurring and reversing, and these are controlled by the sequence numbers we use. So here we can go in and we can separate our journal. So let's say here we're going to go and we're going to set up a depreciation schedule. We have one set up, so we're going to say this is going to be depreciation. So we want to select our journal. Again, these journals, as we know from working with FACTS, it just makes it easier to run reports. We have default journals. So the 1000 series is coming from sales, the 2000 payables, and so on. So again, it's just nice to use what we're doing. So for setting up some expenses or depreciation schedules, it's just nice to use that in best practices. It just makes it easier for us to find it. So again, you can see I created an entry here. And if you look at this entry, again, very simple entry. What we're doing is we're going to credit the accumulated depreciation, and we're going to debit the depreciation expense. If we want to do a new one, we can go here, and we can see that we can use the 8,000 to 899 are recurring, and the 9,000 to 998 are the reversing. So again, we can set this up. Very simple to set up. You can see we have some stuff here. Let's see what we got. Let's close and go back in. Take a look at some of the other transactions we have. So again, here's a simple recurring entry. You can see here that we have this one set up. In this case, we're using the 2000s as the journal because this is something for payables. This is something that we're paying an insurance expense, and we're separating it by the different batches. So again, this is the setup. Once we set these up, we leave them there. We can edit them before we actually post them if need be. So that's here under the recurring and reversing entry. This is the initial setup. And then we have our allocating. What the allocating allows us to do, and again, let's just call up one to take a look at it. It allows us to do a distribution at the end of the month for, let's say in this case, we have, when we enter a bill here, we can see we have this admin. So when we enter the bill throughout the month, we're entering bills against this account. So the from account here, so we're entering different dollars amounts. And then what we want to do is, at the end of the month, we've decided that whatever is in this account is going to be distributed based on a percentage to here. So we're going to see that 41% is going to go to this account, 12% 40%, and 7. So again, the allocation must equal 100%. But the advantage of doing this is that we don't have to deal with when the transactions come in. This is good when you're allocating, say, an overhead expense, like you have, let's say, utilities, like the power or the water, or you may have some payroll-related information that you want to distribute to different departments. So typically, every time we get our bills, anything related to utilities, we want to say put 50% against the warehouse, 25% against admin, 10% against so on and so on. So we can set that up. And again, this allows us not to have to make those calculations every time we enter a bill. What we do is we enter our bills throughout the month, and then from here, we're going to distribute. So at the end, whatever's in the account here is going to be distributed to these other accounts. Again, that's the allocation. And you can see from on both of these, we have the same principle of we select our journal. So again, here we have a journal, and we have our entry on the actual journal. Again, it makes it easy for the reporting. You can see on the allocation, the same thing. We can choose our journal for our allocations, and then we can distribute those out. Okay. Here we have the current period reverse changes. This is if we want to make a change. As you saw here, we created a depreciation, and I'll use that for the example. So if we go here and we call up our depreciation, and we search, we have this one here, and you can see that we're putting 1,500. If we double-click on the line, we can see we have 1,500. If we look here on the expense side, we have 15. So this is the standard recurrence that happens every month. But we may have to, for a given month, we may want to make a change just for that month. If we want to make a permanent change, we would go in here and make the permanent change. So if I change this from 1,500 to 2,000, going forward, the next time I run my recurring in transactions at the end of the month, it'll pick up the 2,000. But we normally want to keep it at 1,500. We just want to make a change for this one-time change. So let's just get out of here, and we can see that that is done here in the current period recurring reverse changes. Okay, so again, what we would do is we would select our journal. So we can do our depreciation. We can call it up, and what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, for this month, we want to change this to 2,000. I'm just going to double-click. I'm going to change this to 2,000, and we're done. So again, our original journal was set for the 15, but we did it that way. We have our recurring reversing allocation print. So here we can run this program. And I'm just going to, we have our option of doing all the entries, recurring, reversing, and allocating. Okay, we can again do our selections. I'm going to go ahead and run it for everything in the file. It will give you a separation of the two. So for example, this is allocating, and you can see the allocation. You can see right now the total amount that's in this account. And here it's going to be distributed. So when I run this at the end of the month, what's going to happen is I have a balance now in this account of $461.44, which is a debit. So I'm going to go ahead and credit that account, and I'm going to distribute out this way. Here's another allocation for printing. Again, the from account, to account. We don't have an about in that one right now. We can see another allocation here, and we can see an allocation here. So again, nice feature to just separate those out if you want at the end of the month to distribute your costs accordingly. And here is our recurring reversing. So you can see here, we have a couple here. We have this one here. Okay, and you can see that the journal is 200, which is payables. We have a journal 900. Remember, the journal here is the reversal. You can see this is an estimated phone expense. So what we're doing is we're going to estimate our phone expense at $330, and we're going to post this. So we're going to do this at the beginning of the month, and then at the end we're going to reverse it after we get our actual bill and put it in. Here's another one, again the 9000 series. This is a prepay. So again we have that, and then we have this one here, which is a depreciation. Again, we can run this report at any given time and take a look at it. You can see. Our final step here would be to post the recurring transactions. And again, you can see here that we have our types. We can choose which ones we want to do. Again, we can do them all. We can select OK. And you can see here we're getting this warning because I've already done this, but I haven't closed out the month. But it's okay. We're going to go ahead and do that. And we want to update these records. We're going to say yes. And again, we're just getting a warning because I've run this process and I have not actually closed the month. So you can see here that we have the 13 and we have the 12. So we have our recurring postings. When we actually go ahead in month end, and we can see here on the month end process, you can actually take care of the recurring. So we can see recurring transactions for the last posted in June, reversing also done in June. Until we close this, we can leave this as a false closeout. Okay, and then when we look in our financials, we will see the corresponding amounts and journal entries. If we go to our inquiries, we can look at the information. So again, that's our recurring transactions. To review what we went over today, it's very simple. It's a sub-module of the FACTS General Ledger system. So if we go into General Ledger, we can go to Recurring Reversing Allocation. We have our first screen, the Recurring Reversing. What that'll do is we define our setup. So we can go here. We can give it a journal type. So again, we should be consistent with our journals. Makes it easier for our reporting purposes. So we do our depreciation. Yeah, we can create a new entry. We can call up an existing entry. And you can see here that it's still at 1,500. We saw before that we changed that one time. For the month of June, we changed it to 2,000, but that was the one time. So it goes back to what it was. And you can see the information here on the recurring entry. Again, you can see down here the entry numbers, how it knows. It uses these amounts and these amounts. I believe we had one for payables. And if we do a search, okay, so we're doing these right here. So this is an estimated telephone expense. So again, what we're doing is we're seeing the journal entry that's going to be created. So what we're going to do is we're going to credit the accounts payable account, and we're going to debit these corresponding expense accounts for the telephone. Again, it is defined as a recurring entry. You can see here. Because it's a recurring entry, what it'll do, it'll automatically post it and do the reversal out the next time we do it. So again, which is kind of an in and out. We just want to do an estimate for our financials, and then when we get the actual bills, this will be reversed out, and the actual bill will be entered. You can see this other one here, the insurance payment. Again, that's also a recurring entry. It's not this one here is the 8,000, so this is recurring, and you can see the amounts. Again, very simple to set up. And that's the setup, and they'll be run on a monthly basis, and they will actually create those actual journal entries will be created. Another nice feature in the FACTS software is the allocation journal file maintenance. This is nice. We want to distribute cost. So let's look at one of the examples we have here. And I believe we also had a payable on this one. Only it's not a payable, it's just here, it's actually an expense. So again, we're using the expense. We can see we wrote a memo, what it is, allocation of miscellaneous admin expense to different departments. So what we're doing is throughout the month, as we're getting our bills, we're entering our bills against the from account, which is the 630-0101 account. And then what we're doing is we're distributing that out. We're keeping 41% of it in that same account, but then we're putting 12% for Department 2, and then here in Branch 2, we're putting 40% and so on. So again, it just makes it easier on the user. I don't have to make these calculations every time I enter bills. I can enter several miscellaneous expenses to this account throughout the given period, and I don't have to do the distribution each time. I can let them all go to the one account, which is the main account, the from, and then we can just distribute them out. Okay. We have our current period changes. As you saw before, this allows us to make changes to the transactions of that time frame. Again, we saw with the depreciation. Here, if I change this 15 to 2000 that we saw, what I'm doing is I'm just doing it for the next time I run this. So my current period is June of 2010. So when I post this for June of 2010, if I change this to the 2000, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post to 2000. It's going to go back to the 1500 when I do July. If I want to make a permanent change, I would go into the first screen, the entry, and I would make the permanent change. But this just allows us to make a change if we need to. Maybe that allocation we did, the 41%, we may have to change to 45% just for this month. Again, you have the printing. You can see everything we have in here. You can look at all the different types of entries. You can do, again, the from-throughs on the beginning and end. Here we're going to go ahead and enter it for all entries. And you can see it's going to give us two separate reports. These are the allocating reports for the distribution at the end of the month. And these are the recurring and reversing. And again, what we'll do is when we're ready, we'll just run the post. You can see recurring last posted. You can see we posted the June in here, and you can see this program will post the recurring, reversing, and cancellations to the journal file. So once we do this and we have to close the month, then we'll do the actual. Right now, if I do it, it's going to tell me they're already in the file. So it's going to overwrite the existing file, which is okay if we need to do that. And again, it's just letting us know we're sure that we want to update these records. And you can see it's reposting. And it's creating the transactions. You can see 13 recurring reverse were created and 12 allocating were created. And again, it's just going to create the journal entries. If we look here in our journal entries, and we'll actually go ahead and set it up. And then once we have them in here, we will go, we don't have to actually do it here permanently. And then what we'll do is we'll go into the end of period. And when we run our end of period update, you will see here that a true closeout will close the current period. Ending on this date, account balance and the budget will be updated. And it tells you here they will be posted. So again, very simple tool to use, very powerful. And facts, again, this allows us to set up our transactions. Recurring transactions, these are things that happen the same every month. This would be like a depreciation schedule. We can have reversing transactions. These tend to be estimates or accruals. In this case, we're just estimating what the phone bill is going to be, but then we're going to get the actual phone bill at the end of the month, so we're going to reverse out our estimate and put the actual in. And you can also do allocating. Allocating is a nice functionality to distribute information from one account to several other accounts. The example we saw, we have a lot of miscellaneous expense that come in throughout the month, so we're entering a lot of transactions to that expense account, and then at the end of the month, we're going to distribute those out. And then, again, you can run your reports, and once you post, you will create them in the file, and then when you close out the end of period, they will become permanent. So that concludes today's training session on Infor FACTS' recurring, reversing, and allocating transactions. This webinar is being recorded. It will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this as well as our other training videos. And once again, we thank you for your time.